In order to be fully prepared and fully execute on every individual trade decision, you need these three things that we're about to get into. If you don't know who I am, my name is Logan Silver. I am a proprietary trader, and I have also been a risk manager for a proprietary trading firm in the past, and I am now an options, crypto, and Forex analyst at OBR Investing. 90% of traders lose 90% of their money in the first 90 days, and I'm here to make sure you are not one of them. So without any further delay, let us get into the top 3 things you need to fully execute on every single trade. So the first thing will be your entry parameters. Every single trade that you go into, you are going to need to know why you are getting into that trade. And this is going to be completely dependent on the system that you trade with in the markets, whether that is a trend following system, a mean reversion system, whatever it may be. You have your own set of entry parameters that must be met in order for you to get in. This allows you to properly grade your setups, properly allocate risk, and know what really is a good setup that you should be getting into, a high probability setup. The second thing that you need is exit parameters. You need to know when you're going to get out. And I don't just mean when you're going to stop out. You also need to know where you are going to be taking profits. If you're not familiar with where you are taking profits, you are opening yourself up to emotional, psychological issues that may hinder your trading progress, such as the issue of when you start to see green, you want to take profits off the table immediately, or you don't know where to scale out because you don't know your exit parameters. So you need to know where you are going to stop out, but you also need to know where you are going to take profit. And again, that is going to be dependent on the system that you trade, but you need to know those two things. And the third thing you are going to need to know is how much you are risking for each trade. And again, this is going to be dependent on your system and your risk appetite because everybody is not the same, especially when it comes to risk management. If you know that this is an A+ setup for your system and you want to risk 1.5% of your account on it or 5%, that is a set rule that you have, and you know that going into your trade, how much you are willing to lose on this specific setup. So we're going to go right into a SPY trade example that I had in this last week on our CPI Wednesday. And this will highlight these 3 things. So let's get right into it. So here we are on SPY, and we are looking on April 12th, which is the day that our CPI data was released. Inflation was rising to 8.5% with a 1.2% month-over-month increase. And what I realized was early morning, I went back and I back tested what happens on CPI days. And this actually was not something that I did before, so this is useful information to have. But in the last 6 CPI releases, I noticed that we gapped up, and if we ran for a little bit in one direction, that's fine, but by the end of the day, or at the start of the next day, we would fill the gap that we made from our CPI release. So with this information in mind, I had an idea of my exit parameters, which is our second thing that we were talking about. So what I first identified going into the day was we gapped up on our CPI data because it came out as expected, so it was technically good news even though that inflation data is horrendous. We then rallied for a little bit before coming back down. One of my confluences for trading decisions is the open range breakout, and as you can see, we got down to our lower ORB, and on the lower time frames, we're closing beneath our lower ORB. So unfortunately, this is where I started to scale into the position. And it was okay, I just say unfortunately because it was a not ideal entry, but regardless, it was a winning trade, right? So we started scaling in there. I scaled in a third of my position here, a third of my position here, and a third of my position here at our upper ORB. We then came down, and my idea for this trade when I first went into it, let's highlight these 3 things, was 1, where am I going to get in? So where am I getting in? I'm getting in on the break of ORB, and then I'm scaling into the trade based on if we break lower ORB or if we continue higher. I'm just going to scale in and get a better average price because I was entering in with smaller position increments. So that's my entry parameters. I know where I'm going to get in and why I'm getting in, right? Because I have the idea that we're going to fill this gap, and we also were getting some bearish indicators throughout the day. Okay, now we set up the trade, right? We are in for an average price around this level. My stop loss is above this high right here. So why is my stop loss here? I had it above this resistance fractal we were in. We wicked above this resistance fractal on higher time frames, but came back lower, so my stop loss was above that range. A candle close above that range on the higher time frames. So at this point, what was my take profit? My take profit was this gap fill. So I know where I'm going to stop out, and I also know where I'm going to take profits. So as you can see, we then did gap fill, and I knew how much I was going to risk on this trade. In this trade, I was not super duper confident, which I should have been in hindsight, right? Because this obviously worked out super well, and the CPI data's release gaps do not lie. But I went in with about half, a little bit more than half of my full size, and that was because I didn't consider this to be an A+ setup. I considered it to be a B setup. So I went in, knew how much I was going to risk, knew where I was going to get out in terms of stop loss and take profit, and I knew why I was getting into the trade. I knew my entry parameters. So this trade obviously worked out very, very well, filled our gap. But again, this is just a framework that you can use for every single trade. This is a framework that I use for every single trade that I get into. Every single trading decision I get into, I know those 3 things. I highly recommend you do. It will allow you to make more rational and informed trading decisions and more accurately improve on your trading. So I really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you learned anything valuable from it, please leave a like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate your time and attention, and I will see you in the next video. Happy trading.